We've been looking at how to create a few different types of plots in Base R. Remember, like I said in some of the previous videos, there are two main approaches to creating plots and figures in R, Base R and ggplot. We'll look at ggplot methods in an upcoming set of videos and keep focusing on Base R approaches here. But in either case, there's lots of flexibility when it comes to customizing your plots to make them look the way you want. I touched on some customization in each of the previous videos, mainly on things that are more specific to a single type of plot. In the next few videos, I'll highlight some additional options that can be applied a little more generally. We'll do a couple things in this video. We'll start with adding plot titles and axis labels, which are pretty straightforward, and then we'll also take a brief look at the list of graphical parameters that are set in any R session and that can be modified to get at some of those customizations you might want. So let's start by generating a data set for an example plot. We'll go with a scatter plot for now. So I'll create two numeric variables with the names int and rand, just like in the earlier video on scatter plots. Int is the set of integers from 1 to 20, and the rand vector is created by adding a small randomly generated value to each of those values. Let's get a basic plot showing the correlation between int and rand with the plot function, using the tilde notation to plot rand by int. Adding a title is easy. We can just use the argument main. So main equals relationship between int and rand. Make sure the text for the title goes inside quotes, since it's a character string and not an object that's already been defined. The plot function used the object name to label the axes, int and rand, by default. But what if we wanted to change those labels? Maybe int and rand are measurements in centimeters, and we want to indicate those units. We can use the xlab and ylab arguments to do this. Again, providing the labels we want as character strings surrounded by quotes. Okay, so adding the main title and x and y labels is pretty easy. Let's look quickly at one more thing in this video, and that's the list of graphical parameters that are defined in each R session. This might be kind of a refresher as I introduced these in the video on scatter plots, but they're probably worth one more quick look here. These graphical parameters can be accessed or viewed with the par function, and they consist of a set of parameters that help define what different aspects of plots in R look like. I'm running the par function here, and when I did this in the scatterplot video, I scrolled up and focused in on a couple of specific parameters, CEX and COL. You might notice the list is returned in alphabetical order. This time, let's look at cex.lab and font.lab, which are going to determine the size, think character expansion for CEX, and the type of font for the x and y axis labels, respectively. Setting the cex.lab argument to 1.5 increases the size of the font, while setting it to 0.5 cuts it in half. The font.lab parameter gives several options for customizing the font, each associated with a numeric value. The default is 1, and setting it to 2 gives us bold font, 3 italics, etc. Additional fonts can be accessed with the family parameter. For example, family equals serif gives an additional font type. So, in summary here, customizing axis labels and adding a title are pretty easy. And then the set of graphical parameters gives you a whole list of items that you can use to further customize how your plots look. We just looked at a few of these as examples. You can browse around online or in R help documents for details on the different graphical parameters. In reality, at least in my experience, there are a few that you're likely to use frequently, and you'll start to get comfortable with those if you do much plotting in R. And then the majority of them you'll probably rarely, if ever, have any need to know about, as the default settings will be fine in most cases. In the next video, we'll look at how to add additional information or data, including new points, lines, or text to an existing plot.